The 2020 NBA draft is probably going to go down as the strangest draft in league history. The college season was shortened. We've got guys coming from outside of college that are being drafted very early on. It was a very, very strange class, and as a result, it's going to be really fun to look back on and regrade every single one of these picks that we're going to talk about here today. First overall, of course, is Anthony Edwards. It can't be anything other than an A+. I'll be honest, I was advocating for LaMelo Ball as first overall in this class because I felt like he had an elite skill, and if you have this much uncertainty in a class, I would just go with the guy that's really, really good at something, that elite skill for LaMelo being passing. And I'm not saying I was necessarily, completely wrong on that. LaMelo's still going to get a good grade here in a couple of picks, but in a redraft, Anthony Edwards is the first pick. It's not particularly close. And by the way, Minnesota did incredibly well in this class overall because of someone that we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. Edwards is an incredibly explosive scorer, is a better three-point shooter than I ever thought that he could have been. And now in this more of like a lead guard role for Minnesota, I think it's just going to continue to blossom. He's still so incredibly young, and every positive thing you could have hoped for Anthony Edwards early on in his career has happened to this point in Minnesota. So of course, he's getting an A+. The player that's not getting an A+ is James Wiseman, who goes to Golden State. An F-, an F, whatever you want to give them. Anytime you have someone that makes as little of an impact as James Wiseman does on your team and is now just traded a few seasons after being selected, it's not a good pick. It just isn't. Now, granted, this top 10 is not supremely talented, and as I mentioned before, it's a really, really weird class, but just putting LaMelo on this Golden State team sounds like so much fun. And I always push back on this a little bit with Wiseman, is that it wasn't a great situation in which for him to develop, because the guy needed to play. Like, he barely played in college because of some eligibility issues. And so he needed to be on the floor, and Golden State couldn't afford to have him out there because he was making so many mistakes defensively. And if he had gone to one of these other teams where he could have had a little bit more chance to develop on the floor, things could have gone better, but they didn't. And so Golden State's getting an F- for this selection. Next up now, number 3, LaMelo Ball going to Charlotte. To me, I'm going to give this an A. The only reason it's not an A+ is because I still have a lot of concerns, obviously defensively, and I'd like to see LaMelo elevate his team a little bit more. Granted, Charlotte is a supremely untalented team, and potentially he could be looking to go somewhere else at some point in the near future. But specifically for the selection, especially when you look at the rest of this top 10, it was an incredibly difficult class to figure out outside of the top 3, and it's a very good selection. I'm going to give them an A, only not an A+ just because of the limited team success they've had with LaMelo, but of course, that's really not all his fault. Next up now, number 4 is Patrick Williams going to Chicago. I'm going to be a little bit generous here, and I'm going to give him a B. And there's two things working in his favor. One, he's gotten better over the course of his career. The upside is still there just because of the defensive ability and his size, and I think he's continuing to work and grow. But the rest of this top 10 is really, really bad. So like, in one point, it's like maybe you should have gotten more value out of the 4th overall pick, but then in another, when you look at the rest of the top 10, it's like, yeah, I don't really see how you realistically could have done better than this. So they're going to get a B for this selection. Number 5 is Isaac Okoro, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I gave them a C for this for this pick. Again, the top 10's not great. Everybody kind of knew when they made the selection that it was like a default, oh, we need a wing, let's draft this guy. And he's improved. He's gotten better as a shooter. He's really good in transition. He can guard. But again, just the value is really not there for the 5th overall pick. But when you relate it to the rest of the class, I didn't want to be too harsh, and so I gave him a C grade. Number 6, Onyeka Okongwu of Atlanta. I was really positive about this one. I'm going to give them a B+. I really, really like him, and I think that moving forward, as he finds himself in a different situation when his minutes aren't capped by the fact that Clint Capella is playing in front of him, he's going to be a really, really good 5-man. And again, in a top 10 that doesn't have a lot of value, I think they did pretty well there. Number 7, Killian Hayes for Detroit. I could have been way more negative about this. I'm going to give them a C. I don't think Killian Hayes is very good, quite frankly, but again, keep saying it, not much you could have done in this top 10. It's really difficult to be harsh until you get to like, the teens. It's hard to be harsh because there's really one guy that kind of just changes everything about this class. Number 8, Obi Toppin for New York. I'm going to give them a B. They do actually really, really well later on in this class, which we're going to mention. He was really a college player, athletic. I think that Tibbs probably could play him more and in some different scenarios and really utilize him better. Great energy guy. I like Obi Toppin. I'll give them a B. Number 9 is Denny going to the Washington Wizards. I gave them a B as well. I like Denny. I think he's good. I think he needs to play more. I think he can guard. I think he's going to continue to grow and improve offensively. This is good value considering how bad this top 10 was. Number 10, Jalen Smith, Phoenix. F-, whatever you want to give him. Again, it's the Wiseman thing. Guy barely plays. They actually declined the option for him, which like never ever happens, especially for top 10 picks. And he's been okay in Indiana, but you know what would have been really cool? Tyrese Halliburton. That would have been pretty cool on this Phoenix roster. F- for Jalen Smith. 11, Devin Vassell, San Antonio. I give them a B+. This is someone that offensively I think is going to continue to grow and improve. I think he's in a really good situation in San Antonio because they're really going to invest in a lot of that, mid-range shooting stuff, coming off screens, all that stuff that Vassell I think is going to continue to provide. And I think in that situation, he should be a pretty good player, so I'm going to give them a B+. This is the big one though. Tyrese Haliburton, at the time going to Sacramento, now in Indiana, A+ times like a million for this pick. Haliburton was a controversial selection because everybody liked him. Everybody liked him in college. He could guard, he's this winning player, could get to the rim, but the shooting form was weird, and it still is weird. And so people just figured, okay, if you can't shoot and you're a guard, there's really no point in having you on a team. And so he slipped all the way to 12. Phoenix could have used him. San Antonio could have used him. Washington, New York, Detroit, Atlanta, Cleveland. In a redraft, he goes either second or third. He probably goes ahead of LaMelo right now, if I'm being honest. He's probably only behind Anthony Edwards in a redraft, and he goes 12. It's an A+ selection for Sacramento at the time, and then, of course, now Indiana. Now, at this point, you might assume, because of how bad the top of the class has been for the most part, the rest of the class would also be bad. No, that's actually not true. From like 15 on, the class is arguably better than the first 15 picks of the draft, outside of course, Haliburton, LaMelo, and Anthony Edwards. That begins with Cole Anthony of Orlando. I'm going to give them a B for this grade. Guy can score. Guy can really score. He's pretty small, though, not very good defensively, but he can score, he can play make, and create. That's always going to be valuable, especially with a mid first round selection. Number 18, Josh Green, Dallas. I'm going to give them an A. Got to continue to improve, overall in terms of like a two-way guy. The shooting can still be inconsistent, but the athleticism and the defense is certainly there. And they kind of swung big on this, hoping for the high upside to hit. And I think it's pretty close to hitting for that group. Number 19, Saddiq Bey of Detroit initially, and now in Atlanta. I'm going to give this pick an A. I think Saddiq Bey is a really good NBA player. I think he's going to continue to grow and improve throughout his career. He can shoot the ball, and he's big enough to guard when he wants to. That's always valuable and great value with the 19th pick. 20, Precious Achiuwa in Miami initially, now in Toronto. I gave them an A for this grade as well. Really, it's the grade for Precious. A lot of these guys have been moved really quickly, by the way. There's something about him that every time I watch him, I just like what he does. Like, he's a little bit more perimeter skilled than you would think, continues to grow as a three-point shooter, and I don't know. I could see a really, really nice NBA role getting carved out for Precious throughout the rest of his career. 21, Tyrese Maxey, A+ for Philadelphia. He's going top 5 in a redraft, no question, no doubt about it. In a really, really great playmaker and scorer, and I think in a situation in which James Harden doesn't show up to Philly, could show even more than he has so far on a really, really good Philly team. It's pretty crazy that he ends up at 21 in this draft. 25, Immanuel Quickley of New York, also an A+. Might win 6th Man of the Year this year. Is really good defensively, can shoot the ball pretty well, is just a really great spark plug kind of player, and again, great value with the 25th pick in the draft. 28 now is Jaden McDaniels of Minnesota. Of course, it's an A+. This is the guy I was referencing earlier. This is an unbelievable draft for Minnesota. If they screwed this draft up, I'm not even sure what their team would be looking like right now, because he is one of the better defenders in the league. In his opinion, he's the best, but I don't think he's quite there, but he's one of the best defenders in the league. And the offensive growth and improvement is something I did not see coming. He's legitimately like 6'8", 6'9". He's got long arms. He's improved as a shooter. He's doing some playmaking stuff. He's the perfect non-star wing you could possibly want in the league in terms of being competitive defensively, having great size, and not just being a shooter. That's so critical and important. That's the next level. It's the next step of like, oh, we have a 3-and-D guy. We have like Jay Crowder in the corner. Okay, that's cool, but if someone closes out on you, can you do something else? Jaden McDaniels absolutely can. A+++ selection. And then last up, this is actually the last selection we're going to be covering in the video. It's number 30. There's basically nobody in the second round that's worth talking about, but the last pick in the first round is Desmond Bane going to Memphis. It's an A+. There's really no way around it. He's an incredible shooter. He's really important to what Memphis is going to continue to do over the next couple of seasons alongside Ja Morant. There were some question marks at the time about his wingspan, and those have all been alleviated. He's big, he's strong, he guards and competes, and he's a really, really good shooter, can get to the rim as well. He's kind of like a little bit taller version of Eric Gordon, but in a really, really good way. Desmond Bane's going to have himself a really nice career. So you can see the depth of this class really shows up later on, but the top of the class, it's a really, really tough look. Let me know down in the comment section below some of the grades that you agreed with the most and the least. Hope you guys enjoyed looking back at this 2020 class. Thank you so much, and I'll see y'all next time.